Welcome to Satoshi Chats episode 10. My name is Jack,
And my name is Casey.
and today is January 10th, 2021. Current price of Bitcoin took a little bit of a fall today. Good time to accumulate. We've seen a top around 42, and now we're around 34. So, I don't know about you, but I'm stacking Satoshis right now.
It's such a bullish thing for me. I mean,
Yeah, it's
like
almost like you want the price to go down.
right, like the consolidation is the best part, right?
Yeah.
And
Um, Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say like it's all to me the dip is always like the best part, you know?
Yeah, it's the greatest part. Today, today we are going to discuss inflation, maybe a little bit of how Bitcoin is deflation. And Casey, would you like to tell us our inspiration for this episode? Or
Yeah,
we're gonna discuss it a little bit, but I mean we'll go into detail about inflation, but we're gonna discuss a podcast that we listened to with Jack from the company Zap and the app Strike. So yeah,
yeah.
would you like
So
to
we're uh we're actually inspired by Jack Mahler's recent interview with Tales from the Crypt podcast, and we think he just had a lot of good things to say on there about what inflation really looks like in people's lives, and how like we're just gonna fight against that, and how we don't really have to like listen to what regulators are saying, because Bitcoin is already past that point, I think. And as he said, it's like
yeah
it's a movement, like, and it's already far gone beyond the reaches of anyone to stop it, and
yeah
yeah, so that was our inspiration to talk about inflation today, and we'll be kind of talking about it in that light, as in like a fight against inflation, really, like a protest against it.
yeah I think one of in the beginning they talk about Russell. um, I believe he plays for the Panthers and the NFL. Um, and they discussed or Jack discussed how he gave Russell the opportunity to reach his goal, and his goal was to get paid in Bitcoin, and Jack made that happen with using his new application Strike, and so they discussed that for a little bit, and he wanted to detail about how just because these are NFL players doesn't mean that they're just automatically extremely wealthy. They he goes into depth about how um, it takes a toll on their bodies, and it takes a toll on their mental health, and he seems very passionate about wanting to um, have not only Russell be able to get paid in Bitcoin, but he also promotes everyone to get paid and use Bitcoin as their store of value.
Yeah, I think that was like the coolest part, was that in the end he wasn't even like he more than his product, he wanted us to know like he believes in Bitcoin as uh, the idea, as the store of value, as the asset, like not just like a payment layer, but also like it's going to save us from inflation. And that comes back to like
Right.
our main topic, which is inflation, and how he talked about it like people don't understand, like they want the house, they want the car and all that, but if you're not making that 20% raise in your income every year, you're not beating the inflation rate, and it's impossible almost to get any of that stuff.
Right. I think Yeah, he one of his examples he used is, someone working a 9 to 5 classic job, let's say they go on the same vacation every year. That vacation gets more and more expensive while they're getting paid the same. And he actually said if your if your salary isn't increasing 15 to 20% a year, then you're getting robbed essentially.
Yeah, and you are getting robbed, like it's being taken away from you without your consent.
Right. Modern day slavery.
Yeah, and because money is attached to your time, because that's what wealth and value is, it really is slavery because they're taking away your time, which is what you could be securing if you had a hard money or a sound money.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's just a problem. And I think as young people, right, Jack, I think is like 26 or 20 something, and
Jack being not
referring
myself, but referring to
yeah,
the
yeah,
owner
Jack from
Zach.
Strike. Yes. He's a little bit older than us, but I kind of consider all of us the same, as in like younger people. And I
Same
think,
generation.
yeah, younger generation, and I think we're all just fed up with the traditional finance scenes, like way of doing things and their barriers and just the way that they think they can control the world, right? Like, think about it. Like, they literally think that what they want is the way that it will be, right? And why can't it be the way that we want it to be? And our way is much
Exactly.
better for everyone.
It is. Um, quickly going back to um, quickly just going back to that. How we said, if your salary isn't increasing by 15 to 20% a year, then it's not doing too good. But he says that Bitcoin, on average, increases by 100% a year. Obviously, some years are extremely higher and some years are extremely lower. But on average, it does yield you over 100% um, higher, deflating the currency. So it really only makes sense when you hear something like that, and to not only store your wealth in Bitcoin, but also get get paid in uh, Bitcoin already in the first place.
Yeah, and so that's like the one of the really cool things going on, is how he's getting people paid in Bitcoin, because it's such like a it's such a way of life getting paid in America, right? Like, you get your paycheck, that's your money, like that's your lifeline. That's what everything comes from. And I think like just changing that to like a Bitcoin standard version of it, where you just get it straight to your cold storage, is so funny. Like, it's such a workaround of the old way of
Yeah,
just like get your money and spend it. It's like, no,
yeah,
instantaneously, without your own say, like you kind of just set it and leave it. Even without your own say, you just have wealth stacked up in sats, like in hard money.
yeah. I thought it was quite interesting his new global system. But we could maybe get into that later. But there's a you're allowed to in the new update you're allowed to choose how often you get paid, and they used an example of someone getting paid every 5 seconds. And I think that it's the whole classic bi-weekly paycheck is going to become something extremely ancient. Like, imagine I mean, this is literally what happens now, so I mean it's not really hard to imagine. But think about it. I mean, you work, you get home, and most of the days you don't even get paid for that day. You have to wait for the 2 weeks to come by, and then you get it all at once. Like, I feel like that will be an ancient um, method of paying employees, and I think that his system of getting paid however soon you would like to. is a way better uh, method to just make everything a lot easier. It only makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. I think like ease of use is key too, right? Like the future of Bitcoin is not like complication, but it's going to be,
Right.
simplified apps and interfaces and understanding of Bitcoin, right? Like it's not getting more complicated; it's getting less. Not in the sense
Yeah.
like obviously the apps themselves might be complicated behind the scenes, but that's the whole point is for it to get more efficient. And so I think like of course it was like almost like natural for strike to eventually happen, right? Like Bitcoin itself was powerful enough for that to happen in the first place. It just needed to be like channeled in a certain way. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the blueprints were there in the same way that like someone had to make like cooking into something out of fire, right? Like if Bitcoin's the fire, like Zap and Strike and other apps like it are going to be like the different things that you can do with just that one like type of energy. So
Yeah.
I think
Exactly.
I think it's just like a different form of like Bitcoin itself, and it was just natural for something like this to come out, and I think it's just super awesome that it would come out.
Yeah. He even says in this specific podcast that the app Strike itself is actually quite simple. It's really nothing too complicated. It's he said that himself. And if you really think about it, the app is just you go on and you could deposit money, and then it it just automatically assumes that it just automatically assumes a Bitcoin standard in the first place because it's centralized around Bitcoin. So it as a holder and as a Bitcoiner, it just makes everything a lot easier.
Yeah, it just like makes a lot of sense to me as a Bitcoin supporter to like want to use a Bitcoin based payment system that like benefits the network and all that, right? Like I don't want to use like a fiat based centralized money system anymore, right? Like the whole a lot of people's arguments against Bitcoin is that you can't use it for like instantaneous payments and stuff, and it's like, well, guess what? You can. And so like the it's like it just negates the need for all other financial systems. And right now, like think about it. If every big store or whatever that you went to used it, you would just use it naturally because you would want to support the network, right? So it's not really that
Exactly.
it's not that the technology doesn't exist, it's that people aren't using it yet. But the people will use it, just like how right now, like just a few years ago, like things like Venmo and Cash App didn't exist. Like I wasn't sending Cash Apps when I was in like middle school. So
Yeah.
so just like how that kind of took over in just a few years, I think like things like this, like Bitcoin payment settlements and stuff, will just take over as like the natural way to transact value.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's very interesting. Yeah, and to say that Bitcoin um, isn't easily transferable, um, strikes proves its success because Bitcoin is the most liquid asset in the world. If you want, and that's the beauty of his whole global system, is that it doesn't it Bitcoin works 24/7. So the way that the money is sent globally at any point in any day is that the money is transferred. Let's say I wanted to send my buddy in Canada $100 worth of Canadian, or I wanted to send him 100, U.S. dollars, and he would receive it in Canadian dollars. The way it works is that you send you send him money, and it goes through the Bitcoin network. So you send him the money, the 100 US dollars gets transferred to Bitcoin, and then the Bitcoin gets transferred to Canadian dollars because obviously it's extremely liquid and someone is willing to trade that. And also it's always open. So there you could do it on a you could send it on a Sunday night and it'll happen instantly because someone is there to buy it and make that trade.
Yeah, I think that's like you said, that's like one of the coolest parts about Bitcoin is that it's so liquid because everyone wants to buy it in every currency at any time, and that opens up a world of opportunities, right? Like, and Strike is just taking advantage of that by basically using that to transact dollars and other currencies instantaneously across the world. Like, why would you not do that? It kind of just seems like, duh, we should have done that in our face, And, and I'm sure it
Exactly.
feels like that to a lot of developers. Like, it's just like, I'm sure, he's kind of sitting on this, like, not only a money machine in terms of like a corporation eventually, but just a fantastic idea, and I think it's just a testament to like who knows what the future ideas of Bitcoin will be. Like someone like there's so much
Exactly.
to be made with it that we can't even conceive of. Like, could we thought of this before with Bitcoin? Yes, but like everyone was kind of like, how is that going to work? And it just work. It figures itself out. The economic incentive is there, so it's going to figure itself out.
Yeah, I it really opened me up to I never thought that Bitcoin could be used in that way, but in hindsight, it's like, wow, it's so obvious. That's a great use for Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah. Hindsight's 2020, and certainly every time something is made with Bitcoin, it just feels so natural, like it was meant to be.
Yeah. So, I mean, a year ago, I wouldn't even imagine something like this existing. So, I can't imagine what the future holds for Bitcoin and Bitcoin related technologies.
Yeah. Um, and so I think really there's just a lot of exciting aspects about it that we can anticipate will change the world. Just like right now, it feels like it's kind of contained within the community. And
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see it just like spread as a phenomenon once people understand. Like I do remember Jack actually showed me Strike when it like first came out in the US a few months ago, like, or however many months ago, and I was kind of like, and I didn't. The reason I was like that is because I didn't really understand what I was looking at. And now that I've been now that I've had it explained to me and I understand it well, so much it's so much bigger to me and more apparent why it's going to be like the next iteration of payment systems.
Yeah. Um, I think we could transfer into maybe I want to talk about deflation because there's something that he really said that opened my eyes up and just made me even more confident really in Bitcoin in the first
Mm-hmm.
place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was something that he said about how pretty much if you revolve your life around Bitcoin and you use a Bitcoin standard, everything around you gets cheaper in price compared to the normal. Where if I was, a no coiner and I had my savings account with a 0.25% yield, like a brand new truck or a brand new house or anything would just be getting, or even Del Taco down the street, it would just be getting more and more expensive. Um, but if I use a Bitcoin standard and I put my savings in a Bitcoin in Bitcoin, all of a sudden houses are getting cheaper, cars are getting cheaper, everything is getting cheaper to me because my currency is deflating and it's deflation and it's getting more and more valuable.
Yeah, and it's such a contrary idea to like what people typically have about their lives. Like, oh, everything gets more expensive. and
Yeah,
things
they
aren't
just
getting
take that
cheaper,
as
you know?
like they take that as the standard, like, oh, everything gets more expensive. That's normal. When really it shouldn't be considered normal. It should be concerning.
Right, think about this. Technology is a deflationary thing, right? So instead of having to pay $20,000 for like a stack of like, you know, 1,000 books, you just have an iPhone with the entire world's knowledge on it, and that only costs $500, you know? So technology is deflationary inherently, but yet there are things, many things in this world that are getting more expensive. Why? It's because the inflation literally beats out the deflationary technology that acts on the world, you know? Like that's how bad it is that we're pumping out so much money that we're beating out ourselves in terms of technology. You know, we're outpacing our technology with our
Exactly.
inflationary dollars.
What could you give an example of like what do you think about when you think of technology that we're outpacing because we're inflating the dollar so much?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to it, but medical costs are super inflationary. Tuition and education are super inflationary, and I think that's a
Yeah.
good example because education is a. I'm not saying that universities don't need money, but you would think that as technology goes, like right now, all the schools are online, right? And they're still charging students the same amount. That makes no sense to me
Yeah.
because the technology there is deflationary. It should make everything cheaper because no one's coming in person to the campus. The campus doesn't need to be cleaned. You know, there's so many things that would make that a cheaper venture in my eyes. But maybe I'm wrong. You know what? But there's those inflationary type things where um, you know the housing market's a good one too because that should technically be getting cheaper to make houses, right? You would think. Um,
Right.
and even though they say like, oh, the space isn't getting smaller, like not everyone wants to live in certain areas, and yet what happens is you know jobs get aggregated to certain areas, and so those certain areas become scarce, and the housing costs rather than getting split up sort of as in like the price incentive drives people away and then it kind of balances all out. The jobs themselves are just there and nowhere else, and so if you don't live there you don't have a job and or you don't have a good job, and so if you do want a good job you just end up being forced to leverage debt to get a nicer house. Very simple
Exactly.
because they
It's
that's how they
quite
encourage debt
sad.
is making things way more expensive, right? If a car it costs $50,000 rather than $3,000, suddenly you have to get a loan for 68 months to get it, and now you're enslaved, right?
Exactly, and that's what they want you to do.
Right. So inflation is slavery because not only in the sense that they stole your time required to get it, but they also rather than you being able to suddenly save and pay cash, you're now so far behind that you have to literally spend into the future, right? You have to borrow against your future self. And that's like how far deep down they've dug the hole. That's when, you know, like when you were taught as a kid, like, oh, the American government is $20 trillion in debt. I remember that figure like when we were a kid, you know? And what that
Yeah, like
means, what that feels like is people having car loans for 48 months, you know? That's what that feels like because the money's so inflated.
right, and then not only that, but we have taxes as well on top of that. So it's you got to pick one or the other, you know.
Yeah, yeah, or pick neither. Pick
Yeah,
Bitcoin.
yeah,
Pick Bitcoin.
yeah, yeah. That's the safest option.
Right. And so think about it like uh let, let, like to kind of relate to the whole Bitcoin hoodies thing. We as humans, right? We no longer need to be at work. At some of us, I mean, there's obviously people who need to be at work, but there are no longer humans who need to be at work in suits. Is what I'm saying. There are people who, instead of suits, could be wearing pajamas, and yet have been wearing suits for like the last 50 years, right? And I think
Yeah,
that's kind of over and done with as far as like working in suits and stuff like that, and it should be. Why? Because it's kind of like an act in terms of like the 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 showmanship of work shouldn't be relied upon to generate value, right? It should be what your productivity is. And I think the whole we're all going to change the world from our pajamas things, I think that speaks to Bitcoin directly because like Bitcoin wasn't made by like some big corporation or anything. It was just made by an anonymous Satoshi Nakamoto on like a forum that like no one was really paying attention to. And
Yeah.
I think we're all just experiencing that in our own way by contributing to things and kind of going against the norm, right?
Yeah, and I really think our generation is really making that breakthrough. It's we're just asking ourselves, wait, I have to wear this piece of cloth around my neck and people will take me seriously? Like
Yeah.
we're really asking these questions that people for decades have not even been second guessing. You know, they
Yeah.
just think it's normal.
Yeah, and humans are so much grander than just dressing up for work every day to go make money for like a balance sheet, right? Like to to actually produce value in a Bitcoin economy, someone's going to have to like really be creative and really produce something that's worthwhile. And I think it's just going to go away with all the like showmanship kind of stuff that just detracts from the world, right? And I think that's like the greatest thing ever is just to free up human time for what's truly like better pursuits just by actually economically incentivizing them to do so, you know?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Powerful, right?
Very powerful.
Yeah. So I think that's all we have time for, folks. Unless you have anything more to say, Jack.
I think that's about it.
All right, that
Um,
wraps it up for Satoshi Chats episode 10.
Thanks for listening. Leave a comment, leave a like, and peace out.
See you later.